Good, Sal. How are you?
Good. Hey, you guys played this team last year, of course. They present a lot of challenges. We know that. Talking with Lorenzo, actually, I know he's made a point a couple of times. I thought it was really interesting to say that personnel, and who you trust to be able to be disciplined and things like that are really important. And on the field, and how key is that for you this week? To making sure that you're going with the guys that you trust they're gonna kind of play it the right way against a guy like Lamar who can make anybody miss and make you look foolish.
Yeah. Well, Lorenzo's right. I mean, he's played against those guys. He knows how important the discipline is in a game plan like this. I mean, being able to have guys on the field that you trust will be assignment sound because, I mean, their offense really challenges your discipline. In order for you to have any success, everybody has to be assignment sound, being where they're supposed to be within that call. So our guys have been pretty good about that throughout the season, and we're going to need to have that done on Saturday as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Coach Frazier. George Randy, Challenger Community News. I'm just wondering, do you think it might have been a little nerves of the first playoff game, or why the tackling was so shoddy on Saturday?
I don't know if it was nerves. I just, we had some missed tackles, particularly in that fourth quarter. That may have been part of it, George. It's hard to say. Just got to do a better job of tackling.
Yes. And were you expecting the Colts to use the tight ends as much? Because they used 4 tight ends in that game. And I know the Ravens, they're another team that heavy on tight end usage for passing.
Yeah, I mean, we knew they had some good tight ends with the Colts, and you're right, the Ravens. And Andrews, he's one of he is Lamar's probably favorite target along with Brown. So, we'll have to do a good job against the tight ends that we're going to face with the Ravens. But they, and Brown as well. He's a guy who can hit some home runs also. So we'll have to pay attention to him as well.
Yes, indeed. And with your coaching experience as being a former head coach with the Minnesota Vikings and in the years of success in Buffalo, have you had any contacts yet for some of these openings, NFL coaches openings for interviews?
I was made aware today that the Texans inquired about setting up an interview. But yeah, so up to this point, that's the one that I know of.
All right. Well, it should be a lot more because you deserve it. You've been around a long time and you know what you're doing. Good luck on that, and also good luck this coming weekend.
Thank you, George.
Hey, Leslie, it's John. George took me right there. Obviously, you've been in this instance where you've interviewed for things since the job in Minnesota. I mean, not that we're asking if you have a foot out the door here, but how important is it for you to potentially get back into the head coaching ranks?
John, I'm really thrilled with what we're doing here in Buffalo, and with so much left to be accomplished in this season. That would thrill me as much as anything to see us continue to play. I mean, for us to get our first playoff win here in 25 years and be a part of that, to be a part of the staff that broke the 17-year drought. I mean, just been winning the AFC East. I mean, there's so much more to be done with this team and this season that it's hard to think about a whole lot of other things. And, we've got so much to prepare for with this offense because it's so unique. You really have to stay focused on what you have to get done. And, there'll be a time where I'll think a little bit about some of the things that may be out there. But for now, really have my hands full, John, with what we're trying to get accomplished this week.
Understandable. Is it easier, though, to focus that way and have that thought process now that you've been around the league, you've had the head coaching opportunity, and it's not that, again, you're not interested in those opportunities, but you've kind of been there, done that, and you can focus more on the present because you've already experienced some of those things that could be in the future.
Man, that's very astute of you because that's exactly how I feel. I just, it's flattering, but I know the importance of what we're doing, and that is that keeps me from having double vision. I can really lock in on what we're doing because I've been there, done that, just like you said, and it's just so important to take advantage of this opportunity that, as you know, doesn't come around very often. When you go 25 years without being in this position, man, you don't want to, let it slip by.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie. You guys, I think it was the Tennessee Titans who came out and said they attributed their success last year in the playoff game against Lamar and Baltimore to kind of what you guys did, kind of setting a little bit of a blueprint. Going back to that game, and I know different year, different game, different week, but what did you learn in that matchup? Because I feel like Lamar, he's kind of one of those kind of players where it's probably beneficial to get 60 minutes in against him to kind of figure out a little bit what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, we had an idea, Matt, going into it. I've seen his stats going into that game a year ago. He was on his way to an MVP season, so you had an idea how talented he was. But once our players got on the field and myself and the rest of the coaches got a chance to see him up close, we're like, wow, this guy's really special, What the tape doesn't do him justice. He creates so many problems for you on defense. And, we did some really good things in that ball game. And like you say, that was a different team. It's a different year. They've grown since then. And, and they've added some wrinkles to their offense that we're going to have to adjust to. So, we realize we can't just look at what we did last year and say, okay, that was good enough. Because, they've grown quite a bit as an offense. Lamar has grown as a quarterback. So we'll really have to do a good job of coming up with a good plan to be able to slow them down. They still are the #1 rushing offense in the NFL.
And not to get into that plan, obviously, but, you look at Tremaine, you mentioned him and his play this last week, and Matt Milano. How important are those guys and what they're able to do against a guy like Lamar that attacks you so much, with his legs?
Well, they're extremely important. They're both very athletic guys with a lot of range and the ability to be able to tackle in space, which is what you have to be able to do against Lamar. It's hard. Sal alluded to it. He can make anybody miss in space. We saw the 48-yard run in the Titans game. He's a terrific player. And but to have athletes like Tremaine and Matt on the field, gives you some comfort. But you do know that Lamar is a special guy, especially in space.
Thanks, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Hey, Leslie, Mark Gaughan here. If the Titans hire you, don't trade Deshaun Watson. That's my unsolicited advice for the day. Okay. You blitzed at a little higher rate this year. Just thoughts on that. But do you think it's up a little league wide and it's worked? But what are your thoughts on that?
So much of it for us, Mark, is just based on how the game is going, and it's always about your personnel as well. But it's more about how the game is going and what it requires. Every week is a little bit different, and that was it for us. Just how was this game going? What was the plan we had in place for that particular team? And adjust as you go.
Do you think if you're playing with a plan, the offense has been so productive, playing with a lead sometimes allows you to do it a little more? Or, obviously, if you got a big lead, you're probably not you're blitzing less.
Yeah, you have to dig deep into the lead part of it. There were a number of games where you go in at the half, it's still a ball game, and maybe things change like midway through third quarter or early in the fourth quarter, things change.
Right.
We had a number of games like that where it wasn't so one-sided in the first half, and you're doing everything you can to keep the game manageable and hoping, because sometimes it'll take the offense a little while to get what they need against a good defense. Let's say maybe our first Pittsburgh game, a few other teams where we got to do some things to make sure that we're keeping this thing in striking distance until we can get going. And Saturday was a little bit like that as well. It's 14-10 at the half. So, it's a ball game, and then it stretched a little bit late in the game. So the game kind of dictates, how much pressure we're bringing. And you're right, once you get a 2-score lead, you probably change a little bit. You may not pressure quite as much.
Thank you.
About the game.
Hey, Coach, Chris Brown here. Long time no talk. Good to see you. I wanted to get your take a little bit, Coach, on It seems like, especially through these last 6 weeks of the regular season and even now in the postseason, that there's a different guy almost every week delivering a timely play for your defense, whether it's Taryn or Micah last week, Josh Norman, Dean Marlowe the week before, Jerry a few weeks ago in Denver. How do you think it's and I hate to use the word infectious in the year of COVID, but it seems like an infectious kind of thing that has run through your defense. Why has it seemingly occurred that way with a different guy almost every week?
Well, it's something we talk about a lot, Chris. Every guy just visualizing himself being the guy that's going to step up and make a play for us. And you're right. We've had a number of guys over the second half of the season that have stepped up in key moments and made big plays for us. And as I mentioned, it's just something we talk about all the time. Don't exclude yourself and don't believe that you can't be that guy in certain situations to come up with that big play that can create momentum for our team or really shut the door on an opponent. So as long as they believe that and just visualize themselves being that person, there's an opportunity for it to potentially happen. And it's happened to a number of our guys.
And while I'm sure that any defensive coordinator in the National Football League would take some dominant player that they could rely upon every week to deliver 3 or 4 big plays, how much does this situation going on now with your defense help from the perspective of delivering performance consistently when the pressure isn't all on necessarily one premier player?
Yeah, I think it's good for your defense. Now you don't argue with the point if you have a guy who's a dominant guy and he's able to come up with those big plays time and time again. Yeah, you're not gonna disregard.
Right.
You'll take that. But we're fortunate that we have the number of playmakers that we do, whether it's Matt Milano or Tremaine or Micah or Jordan, Tre'Davious. I mean, we got some guys, Jerry Hughes, that can make those splash plays at any given point in the game. And it's not a bad thing, to have that throughout the defense. And when the time comes, those special players step up and they make those big time plays.
Thanks, Coach.
Leslie, John Warrow with the AP. How you doing?
Hey, John.
When you, whether you're watching the game yesterday afternoon or saw it on tape, to see how much of a headache does it present to you, or maybe a reminder even for you and your players, that the Titans had Lamar Jackson bottled up? I mean, they were keeping him inside the pocket, and then boom, off he goes and finds that little seam. How worrisome or how much a reminder is that to know that of what this guy can do? Yeah,
John, those are the type of plays that keep defensive coordinators up at night. When you see that, where guys are in position and they aren't able to make that play because that player is so special on the other side. And Lamar's done that in his short NFL career to the point where he's been an MVP already. So, he's capable of making you look bad at times. And you just got to be able to keep working and hopefully be able to corral him at some point. But he's obviously a very talented guy, and it can create some angst for coaches to figure out a way to slow him down.
Angst, that's a good word. And the other thing is, when you look back at what happened on Saturday, for all the good things that happened, the goal line stand, the stopping them on the 2-point conversion, to hold them to only 2 touchdowns on 5 red zone trips, how worrisome, how do you balance the good versus the bad in which you allowed them to score 2 touchdowns in 6 minutes, and it really came down to them missing on a Hail Mary at the end? How do you balance the good and the bad that happened on Saturday?
I think you always want to be honest with yourself. You want to be honest with the players. And there were so many good things that they did in that ball game. I mean, not letting them get off to a fast start as an offense, which they were the best team in the league in the first quarter of the game. And for our guys to, forward those guys in the first quarter, not let them get the momentum like they've gotten in so many games, which really sets up their team. Coming out the second half, not giving up points on the opening drive. Again, it's a big deal. But you also want to point out what you just mentioned, that drive in the fourth quarter when if you get a stop at about 14 minutes at the beginning of the fourth quarter, I mean, it could be, it could be the type of game where, things could really be in your favor late if you can get off the field on that first drive of the fourth. And we didn't. And that's something we got to be better at. You've given up 10 points through 3 quarters, and then to give up, 2 touchdowns in a 6-minute span, you don't want to see that. You don't want to, put yourself in that position. Although, I mean, they're NFL team, it's the playoffs, they're capable, but you just got to find a way to not let that happen.
And I just lastly, just because I think the identity of this defense has changed in some ways over the previous 2 years where, they were so sturdy and stout and didn't give up 20 points. But how do you go from year to year to know that you can rely on them to do this thing and now saying, well, we're going to have to rely on doing this thing to win games this year? How do you go about making that transition mentally and maybe even, acknowledging the fact that we're not the same group or defense that we were a year ago in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, you have to come to grips with that, at least in my mind, very early on, and starting with the off season, starting with training camp, starting with new faces, new people, new players. Early on it's going to be a little bit different, and at some point you're going to have to make some adjustments, and you got to be able to do that, but yet still be able to gain some momentum, like we talked about so many times. Whereas in November, December, you're making that step towards being a really good group, and I think we made those adjustments along the way, and we have been playing good football down the stretch, good defense, and but I mean that's part of what we have to do as coaches. You have to be able to adjust. Don't be pig-headed and say, okay, we're just going to keep doing X, Y, Z because it was good for us with this group a year ago or 2 years ago. You got to adjust, and we try to do that.
Thanks, Leslie, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Leslie, it's Kim Jones.
Hey, Kim.
Hi. From what I know of the defensive players that you have that I've gotten to know just a little bit over these years, it strikes me that they all play hard and they care a great deal, and you have some good leadership.
Yes.
Have you sensed any frustration from them that this season's been really hard for your defense? It feels like, as a viewer, as someone who watches all of your games, you guys have had to fight and claw for everything you've gotten this year. Do your players get a little tired of that? Do they get frustrated by that?
I hope not, Kim. I mean, you want to win. Win is the goal, and we made some contributions towards our winning, and you love to be consistently dominant, but in this year of COVID, I don't know how many teams can say that on defense. So you just got to keep playing and try to be good in different areas, red zone, third down, points allowed, all those things, and just keep battling every single week, especially in the playoffs. I mean, it's so hard in the playoffs, and it's hard during the regular season. But for sure, when everybody's good, you just got to battle, fight, scratch, claw, do whatever you got to do to come away with a win. My
last one is, have you seen enough Hail Marys, even though this one worked out, I think, as it should or as it ideally would? Yeah, we've seen probably more Hail Marys we've seen in the last 10 years, but all right, as long as it finishes like it did the other day with Michael Hyde knocking it down, that's cool with me. So that's perfect. Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
All right, that's all for today, Leslie. Thank you.
All right, thanks.